All right. Okay, we are on the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, chapter 30, The Master in Various Moods. And they're just sitting around in Ramakrishna's room in Dakshineshwar. So Latu, Ramlal, Harish, and Hazra are living with him at the time in the temple garden. And several other devotees, Manilal, Priya, and his relative Hari, and a member of the Brahmo Samaj, and several other Marwari devotees from Calcutta are all in the master's room. So this is a lot of people that he might be talking to for the first time, amidst a few that have been there for quite a few times. So it's always interesting to know who's in the room when Ramakrishna gives a teaching that will give you a context for understanding it properly quite often. So he says, triumph or defeat is in the hands of God. We cannot understand his ways. You must have noticed that the green coconut remains high in the tree and is exposed to the sun, but still its milk is cool. On the other hand, the panifal remains in the water, but when you eat it, it heats the body. Look at the body of a human. The head is the root, and it's at the top. Right. So he's just saying, as much as we want this world to obey our logical perspective of things, he says, don't. It doesn't. It's unreal. And your narratives of time space causation are imposed by the mind to provide an explanatory narrative that allows you to have some sense of control, some sense of safety, some sense of refuge in a world that you cannot understand, in a world of which you are seemingly such a small and insignificant part. We've created this idea of a self, this ego self, to empower ourselves and to find the courage to get out of bed in the morning and the courage to start to build a life. You know, I remember one of my favorite little spiritual moments happened in New York City. I was sitting in not Golden Gate Park, wrong side of the country. I was sitting in Central Park, and it was a Saturday, and I was with a devotee, and they wanted to take a nap, so we jumped this little fence and climbed up on this grassy knoll, and Sushil went to sleep, and I sat there just kind of meditating and watching the world go by. And there was, all kinds of things going on. There was a croquet game going on just across the little path. There was a violinist who was playing on his little fiddle, and I don't know if it was his girlfriend or someone he knew who was singing along. And I could tell from her voice that she was an actress, a Broadway singer, because it was just beautiful. And there was some people dancing, and there was a group of guys walking up, just having a bunch of dude time together. And I remember watching it and just entering into this mood of such a deep love for everything that I was looking at, because I was seeing what I felt for a moment, what I saw for a moment, was all of these human beings who were born into the utter unknowing, born into a world that cannot be understood, a world where we're almost powerless, and at its core is a terrifying event. I mean, that's how we start screaming, fresh out of the mother's womb. Like, what the heck's going on already? Right? And we grow up in that. And I just felt such a pride for humanity that day as I just saw these people have created dreams, have created beautiful things, have found a way of navigating the terror, of navigating the unknown, even as we face imminent death, an end to all things, that still every day people find a reason to get up, to be brave, to push forward, to try again, to learn, to open, to love, to grow. And I was so overwhelmed with such a feeling of elation at this inbuilt determination of humanity to make it work, to go forward, doggone it. It's like take it on the chin over and over and over again and still get up. And I just loved that. And so I really feel that my relationship with the divine, with the beloved, and my relationship with spiritual life has been the embodiment of that, bringing the world down to a moment, the moment that I'm currently in and I'm always in. and to take the inspiration from inside, not to count and assume the things outside because you don't know the things outside. That's why you place them outside of yourself, according to Nisargadatta. And so this to not focus on the things that you don't know and don't let your mind fill in the lack of knowledge with narratives that may or may not be true or accurate. Instead of going that way, to stay always in the present and to be in the company of this divine inspiration that gets me out of bed in the morning, that lets me build a life and has shown me what principles to build it on in order to be fulfilled, in order to have a refuge, who has placed these scriptures in my reach that give me an understanding of the nature of things, to build that courage and to build that way forward. And so the ways of God indeed are inscrutable, right? And so that's why he or she or that tells us, don't look out that way. You're going to get lost. That way just keeps bifurcating, splitting, more and more options, more and more options. Find the moment itself, which is you. Look inside and find the principles upon which it is all expressed, from which it all comes, and learn to live in harmony in that way, in that way. And then this world makes sense. Otherwise, this world doesn't make sense. You can force it to a certain extent to follow a narrative of your own, but there will always be evidence that it isn't so, right? And so the only way that it works is to come into this moment and to find peace in this moment from what you have available inside, you know, and then look out and build a dream, build an offering, create something worth giving, right? And so he's saying that everything's in the hands of God, triumph and defeat. We can't understand these ways. The funny thing, look at the body of a person. The head is the root and it's at the top. So if we start there, how can you make sense of anything? So Manilal says, well, what then is our duty? I mean, what are we supposed to do? Right? If we can't understand it, and if it's inscrutable, and all this nonsensical stuff is there, then what do we do? What's our duty? And the master says, to remain somehow united with God. There are two ways, karma yoga and mano yoga. Householders practice yoga through karma, the performance of duty. What is this mano yoga? Anybody heard that one before? How many times have I read this book and never seen that word?
Mano is manasu, that means mind.
Right, maybe it's Raja Yoga. Let me look it up here real quick in my
Mano yoga. Yes.
Mano Yoga. There it is. The
Mm-hmm.
Mana Yoga is thus a route to understand the functions, synchronicity, and influences of our mind.
Mm.
What is this? What a crazy thing.
Oh, this is different.
This is very odd. I've never even heard of this. And
Is
there's
it
a whole bunch of.
MANOEA, Swami, or MAN?
Oh, it's a Jain practice
Okay.
that signifies the mental activities that affect the vibrational energies within the soul's space points. Powerful tools to relax our conscious mind. Okay, so looks like it originates in Jainism. So it's not one of our universal paths, but it is something. So somehow, let's see if he picks up on it here in a minute. So to remain somehow united with God, right? To remain somehow united with love. That's what God is. God is pure love, pure wisdom, pure being. So stay united with that ideal, you know, start your action in every moment from that origin. So this is what he's saying. This is the way that we live in a world that makes no sense, that cannot be comprehended. He says, stay close to God, stay close to the divine principle that is manifesting it, and everything will be fine. There's two ways. Karma yoga. Why? Because karma yoga is exactly what we just described. Karma yoga is staying present in the moment, doing a thing for its own sake, not for any particular results and not for any particular reason. Doing whatever you're doing in front of you for its own sake, which means do it with love, imbue it with wisdom, and create it, let it be, right? And when you do, offer it to the moment and pick up the next thing and repeat. Lather, rinse, repeat over and over and over again, like that in this world. So that would be the karma yoga and mana yoga. Householders practice yoga through karma, right? The performance of duty. All the things that you have to do, don't do them for reasons that binds you to them and causes anxiety and regret, right? Just do them with your nature. And so if you have a boring job, where you're just, I don't know, stamping the letter P on pillows, each time you do it as if it's the first time, because it is the first time in this moment that you're doing it, and do it carefully, and do it with concentration, and do it as if when that pillowcase gets swooped down the line to the next person, it's got the best P on it you could have stamped, done with your greatest devotion and greatest attention, right? And you just keep practicing that and keep practicing that. And then, even though you're doing a completely repetitive, horribly boring, seemingly meaningless task, you can realize God. You can find the highest joy, the highest bliss in life from even that, right? So it's not what you do in this world that's important, it's how you do what you do in this world. If you do it with that love and that focus for no return as an offering to the universe, you're well on your way. Right? There are four stages of life: brahmacharya, garhastya, vanaprastha, and sannyas. Sannyasis must renounce those karmas which are performed with special ends in view, but they should perform the daily obligatory karmas, giving up all desire for results. Sannyasis are united with God by such karmas as the acceptance of the staff, the receiving of alms, going on pilgrimage, and the performance of worship and japa. Right? And incidentally, and oddly enough, in Vedanta or in the Ramakrishna order, we get the staff at the time of our vows, but then we snap that staff, we break it and throw it into the river, right? And so we don't adhere to just the wandering aspect of sannyas, that we are everywhere and of all types. We are wanderers and we are monastery dwellers, right? So, yes, sannyasis must renounce those karmas which are performed with special ends in view, right? So we're not running after desires. That's what special ends in view are. Those things that you desire or are wanting for some reason. But they should perform the daily obligatory karmas, right? Giving up all desire for results. So those things that you have to do every day, don't let them turn into desire machines, desire functions. Keep them all pure by doing them for their own sake in the presence of your beloved, if you want to bring the beloved in, and offering it to the beloved moment by moment in sweetness. Sannyasis are united with God by such karmas as the acceptance of the staff, the receiving of alms, right? Which means that we depend on the beloved to give us money, not as a result of our work, right? Not as a result, not in any kind of mercantile way. Why? Because we have to learn that God's love is not mercantile, right? It's not this or this for that. And so, in a very direct way, if you're going to be a sannyasin, that in the sannyas camp, we had to go and beg for our food every day. And that is an amazing ego busting experience. I can tell you, it is a very difficult thing to do. And that's the point, right? That's the point. One, to rely on God and God alone, not on what you're doing through a job or your contribution to society, and to bust up your ego, to really get that humility and get that dependence on God, right? To know that it is God and God alone for you, that it's not what you're doing, it's not even how you're doing it. Everything is with and for and in God. And so he's saying through the receiving of alms, through going on pilgrimage, that wandering, not putting down roots in one place, right? Not getting attached to a particular place and particular people, but going on pilgrimage, letting the presence of God inspire where we go and what we do. And the performance of worship and japa, right? Our daily practice, where we sit and focus on God in particular and above other things. It doesn't matter what kind of action you're engaged in. And this is very important, right? And I say it's important because I look back at my life when I was in the world and I was working. I was 100% focused on what I was doing and not how I was doing it. And that's really was the cause of my midlife crisis. You know, when 45 years old, I woke up and found myself, a computer analyst in a cubicle in an accounting department, and I just looked and I remembered all my childhood dreams. I was going to do this and I was going to be that, and life was going to be amazing. And there I was I wasn't 45 at that time, actually, because I was in the monastery at that time. So I was like 30, 35, right in there. And I just remember just suddenly being like, really? Is this it? Is this what I became after all those dreams and aspirations as a kid? Are you kidding me? Right? And it wasn't long after that that I quit everything and started wandering, looking for meaning, looking for something worth doing in the world. And I came up empty. I traveled around the world for a year, literally looking for what would be meaningful that I could spend my life on. And so if I had known this, I would have short-circuited that whole investigation and could have gotten a head start on it, on everything else, right? So it says it doesn't matter what kind of action you are engaged in. You can be united with God through any action, provided that performing it, you give up all desire for its result, right? That's what takes your mind off of the divine, pursuing results, pursuing desires, which are born of attachments, and it becomes a head game at that point. And there is no fulfillment, there is no realization in head games, in following narratives, in search of a different set of thoughts by pursuing things for reasons, right? There is the other path, Mana Yoga. A yogi practicing this discipline doesn't show any outward sign. He is inwardly united with God. Take Jadabharata and Sukadeva, for instance. There are many other yogis of this class, but these two are well known. They shave neither their hair nor their beard. All actions drop away when a man reaches the stage of the Paramahamsa. He always remembers the ideal and meditates on it. He is always united with God in his mind. If he ever performs an action, it is to teach men, right? So all actions drop away when a person reaches the stage of the Paramahamsa. When you realize God, all actions drop away because you are instantly fulfilled. You're no longer chasing the needs of the body and defining yourself by the moods and needs of the mind. You're content. You could die and let the body drop in that moment. Doesn't matter to you. It's inconsequential to you because you clearly know and experience life beyond body and mind, right? And so all actions drop away when a man reaches that stage, when a person sees that. He always remembers the ideal and meditates on it, not because he's just in the habit of remembering it, but because it has become his all in all. It has become the answer to all of the things he needs refuge from. It's the faith that gets him up to move in any direction, right? He's always got his awareness on that divinity, on that divine principle within. He always remembers the ideal and meditates on it. He is always united with God in his mind, right? And what this means is that he's never pulled out of his meditative state. He can be doing other things, But everything that he'll be doing will have a line drawing it back to the presence of the beloved. So he'll work out ways that if he's knitting a turtle, he's knitting a turtle for the Lord, right? Or crocheting, sitting there doing his thing with the thought of the Lord, maybe saying jopam with each loop, with the name of God, and then giving it, setting it free afterwards, not selling it, not wondering if it's good enough for art, nothing. He's put his heart into it. He's put the name of God into it. It was done in the moment for its own sake. And then it's given to the first person that walks by, to sitting on the counter, to selling at a nun's bookstore, whatever it is, right? It goes. Oh, where was I? What was I doing here? Blah, 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 blah. Provided that you get rid of the desire for its result. In Manu Yoga, that means it's all done inwardly, according to what he's saying here. That they don't shave their hair or their beard. There's no outward sign. Their sannyas, everything is happening inwardly. They're not wearing the robes. They're not making the external commitments. They've made all the internal commitments, and they're living in that space, right? All actions drop away when a man reaches the stage of Paramahamsa. He always remembers the ideal and meditates on it. He is always united with God in his mind, right? So God is always there as a presence. I've been working on that for years. I'm not there yet, but for years I've been trying to make the conversation of my mind, which is usually between the thinker and the listener. I've been trying to be conscious that there's a third party there, the Divine Mother for me, who's always a part of my mental conversations, right? Always a part of the mental conversation. So if my body says it's hungry, I'll look to Mother and say, what should we have tonight, Ma? And it's like, yeah, let's go look in the fridge. And then I'm looking through the fridge and I'm just thinking random thoughts. Do I feel like a grilled cheese? What do you think, Mom? Grilled cheese with tomatoes? Well, there's mushrooms. How about that? It's a conversation, always a three-way conversation, not just a two-way conversation, always keeping the presence of the beloved in the forefront of my mind as an expression of the reality. That's the fact. I am always in the presence. I'm in the dream of God, right? He is always united with God in his mind. If he ever performs an action, it is to teach men, right? So he's not searching for anything for himself. All of his actions are being inspired by the divine principle of Satchitananda. And so even the teaching of men is a byproduct. He doesn't go to teach men. He lives his life and people are taught, right? He lives his life and people are taught. Ramakrishna did not consider himself a teacher. He hated to be called a guru. As a matter of fact, he refused to let people call him a guru. And now that he's left the body, we call him a guru left and right. But when he was around, he would be like, no, 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 I'm no guru. She's the guru, and he would always point at Mother like that. A man may be united with God either through action or through inwardness of thought, but he can know everything through bhakti, through devotion. Through bhakti, one spontaneously experiences kumbhaka. The nerve currents and breathing calm down and the mind is concentrated. Again, the mind is concentrated when the nerve currents and breathing calm down. Then the buddhi, the discriminating power, becomes steady. The man who achieves this state is not himself aware of it. Ooh, how's that for authentic? Right? Where you become something so totally that there's no awareness of it. It's such a natural flowing of Satchitananda out of you that it's no longer a mental capacity. It's no longer a mental gyration, doing, getting, earning, impressing, bartering, whatever it is. None of that is there. This is a person who is truly in the moment, right? Someone where there is no thought. Their action is not born of hunger. which is what causes thought. Thought is always caused by imbalance, right, in the mind. Usually it's the thought of me in mind somewhere that imbalances the mind and causes a retinue of thinking and thoughts. And so we return to that moment, and we return to our contentment and our fullness, right? And we sit and we stay in that space. And this is really quite nice here. So he says that we can know everything through bhakti, through love of God, which is really love of love, which is love for its own sake. When we come to that, we can know everything. All of the practices of the Raja Yogi, all of the practices of the Jnani Yogi, all of the practices of the Karma Yogi, we get all of them, right, through the bhakti path. So even the highest Advaitic realization can be ours through the bhakti path. But not only that, you get a choice, right? You get the choice whether you want to be sugar or just taste sugar. Through bhakti, Mother has made an allowance for us to be eternally present in the face of our chosen ideal, in the company of our chosen ideal. It's interesting. It's a weird thing to say because I'm sure that there's things that are beyond comprehension that mean something about that. Because ultimately we always think, oh, well, everything is going to come back to the 0 point at some point and then expand again and start over. That's sort of the cyclical explanation that we have here. But then we have Ramakrishna telling us that, God takes form by the devotee's devotion, freezing, as it were, the formless into a form, right? And so normally we would think, yeah, and that's temporary until that form melts, at the end of time. But then Ramakrishna makes that fascinating statement. He says there are places in the ocean where the ice never melts. And so he seems to give us the possibility that you don't have to merge into one without a second, that you could eternally be in the company of God, be in the company of your highest ideal. And so it's a beautiful thing. But Ramakrishna is making the point. We can have everything through this love of love for love's sake. Through bhakti, one spontaneously experiences kumbhaka, that bhava, that overflowing single-pointed love for God that flows into God, in your meditation. The nerve currents and breathing calm down when the mind is concentrated. And boy, do they. They can almost stop. When there's concentration, when you're deep in your meditation, there's a lot of indications like where they would check to make sure the person was still alive. We have we have stories of people who go into this deep meditative state and get buried and wake up 1,000 years later. So you can go as far as you want. Haven't met any of those and don't have the evidence for those, but they're in the stories in the scriptures like that. So yes, the body, is an interesting object, an interesting thing with interesting abilities to it. So the nerve currents and breathing calm down when the mind is concentrated. Again, the mind is concentrated when the nerve currents and breathing calm down. So it's a two-way street, right? You can either meditate and get to that state of concentration and your breathing will slow down and your nervous energy will slow down and, relax. Or you can sit there and work on your breath, slowing your breath down, and work on your nerves, letting go of the anxiety, and the mind will come to that stable, concentrated state, right? So you can do it from either end. Just do it. That's the point. Then buddhi, the discriminating power, that part of you that's looking, is this what is true, what is not true? What is real, what is not real, right? That part of your mind, the discriminating power becomes steady. Right? It becomes steady because it's working from ground zero. It's working without the lens of your attachments, your past, working without the lens of your desires, your future, but is working in the moment, free from past and future. So it's established, it's clear in its ability to see what is true and what is not true in the moment. It becomes steady. The man who achieves this state is not himself aware of it, right? It's spontaneously living is what it is. There's nothing to be aware of because you're not lost in psychological processes. You're not lost in thought narratives of thought. You're being. That's it. And your condition is not aware to you, is not in your awareness, because your condition would require the past. And in the concentrated present state, of this bhav that he's talking about, there is only you and God in that moment, and the rest is inspired. The rest happens of its own accord, spontaneously, which is why he says spontaneously. All right. Any questions or input or ideas so far? That's some pretty juicy stuff in there. All right. One can attain everything through bhakti yoga, right? So he's selling bhakti here. And Ramakrishna often sells bhakti, but he's not exclusive, right? I love the way Vivekananda summarizes it. Vivekananda says about himself, he says, externally, I'm all jnana, right? I'm all about Advaita and whatnot. He says, but internally, I'm all bhakti. Internal, I'm all love of God. And he said Ramakrishna is the opposite. Externally, he was all bhakti, right? Loving mother, loving the devotees, love, 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 love. But internally, he was all about jnana. He had that absolute renunciation, that staggering renunciation, that staggering discernment, his ability to know exactly what is and what isn't, right? So there was a combination of the two in there, but he says to us the reason that he pushes bhakti is because he says that he's found it to be the fastest and most efficient way to get to your goal, to get to have realization, to know the beloved. And so he heavily encourages people in bhakti. He says in this day and age, it's the most efficient path because it can follow you through the day. Your path of jnana, you can't hold on to those thoughts and those states of being while you're trying to run a job or feed a baby or, mow a yard. It's like very difficult because all of those require the duality. All of those require you to be a person. And so they're very difficult tasks to do in this day and age because we don't have that luxury of time. Society does not support that level of commitment to spiritual life. And so he says it's best. Bhakti is the best because you can take God, the beloved, with you everywhere. And you can sit in the shrine of your heart all the time, regardless of where your body mind is, right? And you can work from that place in that awareness. And the biggest sell point is that the path and the goal in bhakti yoga are the same. Love is what you practice, and love is what you realize. And so it's a beautiful unity, and it will get you there very quickly. And the mind is not so easily distracted from it. The more that you fall in love, the more that you experience the bliss of grace in the presence. It becomes its own corrector. You feel that bliss stop, and you are suddenly drawn to the awareness that you've begun thinking narratives in your mind. And so you let go of them again and return to your home, to your bliss. So one can attain everything through bhakti yoga. I wept before the mother and prayed, "O mother, please tell me, please reveal to me what the yogis have realized through yoga and the jnanis through discrimination." And the mother has revealed everything to me. All right, there's a statement. This is why Ramakrishna is on the shrine, right? This is why we look up to him and worship him and call him, or as some call him, an avatar, right? It's for his ability in his absolute honesty and childlike nature to make that statement. Mother has revealed everything to me. She reveals everything if the devotee cries to her with a yearning heart. She has shown me everything that is in the Vedas, everything that is in the Vedanta, everything that is in the Puranas, and everything that is in the Tantra. Right? So Mother has revealed everything. And this is why he makes statements like, I am the embodiment of all gods and goddesses, right? This is what gave him the ability to define the Sanatana Dharma as that which contains all forms of worship, of the formless and that with form, right? Of all religions, that it is the embodiment of all of the major paths in the world, right? So he saw all of this, and Mother has revealed all of this to him. And Manilal wants to know, well, what about Hatha Yoga? Right. You've mentioned all those other things. Has she revealed anything to you about Hatha Yoga? The master. The Hatha yogis identified themselves with their bodies. They practice internal washing and similar disciplines and devote themselves only to the care of the body. Their ideal is to increase longevity. They serve the body day and night. That is not good. Okay, that's not to say that that's the only way to practice Hatha Yoga. You know, there are practitioners of Hatha Yoga who don't have that problem. But Ramakrishna, in general, he treated Hatha Yoga, you know, or yoga as Americans know it, that he treated that yoga with some caution. He says, yes, it's fine if you use it for its original practice, which is to train the body to be able to sit in meditation for long hours of time without suffering. He says, you know, if you're sticking to that, fine, it's a good thing. He says, but the danger of it, and you can know this, go talk to anybody in a yoga class, right? It puts your mind on your body. And it starts developing that. Your mind stays on your body. You start becoming very concerned with what you eat and whether or not you've stretched and all of the different, you know, things in the body. They become your primary concern. And that's the danger, he's saying, you know, be careful. That's all he's saying. He's not forbidding it. He's saying just be careful because it puts your mind on your body, and that's not where you want your mind to be. So if you can do it without doing that, fine. Go forward. Beautiful thing. It's a wonderful practice. Don't get lost in it. Don't get caught. What is your duty? Should you renounce woman in gold mentally? You cannot look on the world as cow droppings, right? So he's asking the householders in the room. He's saying, what is your duty? You should renounce woman in gold mentally, right? You can't do it externally because you've got a wife, you've got a husband, right? And there are duties that you have taken a vow toward fulfilling for your life together, right? That's fine, but you renounce inwardly, right? You don't look at each other in that way. You look at each other as companions of the divine in each other. You look at each other as people that you can offer your worship to. You can worship God through your partner, through your wife, through your husband, through your children, right? You're always looking through them at the divinity behind them. And through that, you become a wonderful husband, a wonderful wife, a wonderful child, right? Because you've always got the best interests of the other in your mind and not your own interests in your mind. This is one of those things, you know, I'm it's ironic to have a sannyas talk about relationships because what do I know about relationships, right? But it's one of those beautiful things, I think, you know, from being outside the system. I've watched the system. And, you know, I read through these ads or have read through these ads in these. Actually, the only time I've ever done it was there was a young Indian guy in the monastery. I went down into the basement to the computer room, and he was in there. And I just walked up behind him, was looking over his shoulder, and he was looking at some dating app for ABCDs. All right. What I can't remember what that stands for, but it's basically Indian desis, I think they call themselves, those people who have immigrated. And so this dating site was for desis, and I was reading through it. And the first thing I was amazed by is that every single ad listed their uh, caste. And I was shocked by that because been told so many times that that's illegal and that's not there anymore. And I think in the cities it mostly isn't. But you know, India's the villages, they're not going to let go of anything in less than 1,000 years. So it'll be there for a while. But they had that there, and then just reading the ads, everybody is looking for someone to serve them. You know, everybody's looking for someone who's going to do the things they like to do, who's going to, like the things that they like to like and whatnot. It's always up to the other person to be the perfect person. And, if you've got two people looking for a perfect person to make their relationship whole, that's going to be problems. That's nobody can live with that stress of being the fulfiller of someone else's life. It can't happen, right? And so I thought, you need to be very easy to look through those. Look for the person who talks about what they bring to the relationship, not what they hope to get from the relationship, what I have to offer. Oh, I'm a great cook. I'd love to wake up on Saturdays and make you the best omelet breakfast you've ever had. I'd love to take you hiking and to just, share this beautiful world with someone. And I'd like to write you poetry and I'd like to sing you songs and blah, blah, blah. And then you look for someone else who's saying the same thing to you, right? And then, then you're both entering into the relationship with the focus of what can I give to this person? What do I bring to this person? And it works only when the other person is thinking the same way. You both are taking care of each other's needs and inspiring each other and making every attempt to love each other. And then the mistakes become forgivable, right? And you have a better chance. It might go sour too, but you'll have a better chance, right? To be giving. Why am I going into that? I don't know. Somehow renouncing woman and gold mentally in a householder relationship, right? Don't look on your partner as something that gives you and fulfills you. Look on your partner as an opportunity to worship and to love and to learn to love freely without condition. Make that relationship your practice of loving the God in that person and not forgetting that. Oh, it's raining again. Oh, what a joy. That's so wonderful. I'm, I'm so loving it. I went out last night, stood in the rain on the front porch for a while, just feeling the drops on my face. I haven't seen rain since I got here 5 months ago. And what a joy. It was Colorado, it would rain like once or twice a week, and it was just wonderful just to go stand in the rain. All right. All right. So he says, what is the householder's duty? You should renounce woman and gold mentally. You've got to practice these things internally. You can't renounce your wife and children if you've already got wife and children. Ramakrishna makes one exception. That's if you've earned enough to take care of them for the rest of your life, then you can put them in the care of someone else, leave that for them and go and renounce the world. You can do that, but you can't just walk away from your family, which was not a common practice, but it was a practice before that. Right? You cannot look on the world as crow droppings. You can't say the world's meaningless because you're taking that path, which requires you to fulfill duties in service of the divine in your family members. You're expanding your sense of self, which is ego busting, in the opposite way. You get married, now you have to compromise your will and your view of life, right? To be a will that the two of you can work on together. And then you have a child, and now you have to give up a full night's sleep. You have to give up your aversion to changing diapers and your desire to spend all of your money on food for yourself, right? And so little by little, the householder path, that's the way it goes. It spreads your sense of self one being at a time until at the end of your life, you've got 10 grandchildren and, five children and, a wife and their friends and their families and their pets. And you as the mother or father of the whole batch, your ego embraces all of them. You'll be there for any of them. They come to you and you're instantly available to them. And that's the householder path. That's how the householder gets her or his ego busted by expanding it beyond its limit, right? Until it breaks. And then you're just open to everybody. And for the monk, it's the opposite. Monks, it's push everybody away from yourself to the same distance and then find God within yourself and then see it in everyone and then bring everybody forward together. Everybody's your mother, everybody's your brother, everybody's your father, right? And so it's the opposite path. Both of them are paths and both of them take you to realization, right? And so you choose the path and you take it. And Ramakrishna is adamant many times. There's not one better than the other. It's what you need to do based on where you are and how you're going forward and what will work best for you, right? He says that householder, that life is like having a fort, whereas the sannyas life is you're just a man on the field with a sword in your hand. Right? Good luck to you. All right. The Goswamis are householders. Therefore, I said to them, you have your duties in the temple. How can you renounce the world? You cannot explain the world away as Maya, right? You can't do that. You can't. And it's terribly difficult. Greg's not here today, otherwise I'd, because he shared that with me when he first left the monastery. He had been in for 23 years, and it just became clear to him that he had other things that he wanted to do in life, and so he went to do them. And he had a real rough go of it for the first few years. And I remember talking to him and him telling me, he says, this is more difficult than you can imagine. He says, for 23 years, I renounced the world and saw it as nothing and saw it as, as unreal. And he says, now I'm out there competing with 25-year-olds, 30-year-olds, trying to do a craft, his art, and trying to keep up with them. And he said, they're driven. They believe this is real. you know, they're engaged with this world, with Maya. They're bending it to their will. And he says, I just don't have that drive. It's hard for me to stay interested. It's hard for me to stay focused on those things because my mind has just for so long not been allowed to or not been taught to go after them, to go do them. So he was really suffering with that. And so this is what Ramakrishna is saying here. He says, you can't be a householder and explain the world away as Maya. That's not the way to do it. Your path is different. And so if you're a householder, Jnana Yoga is not going to work for you because your wife is always going to expect you to be her husband. You can't just be, oh, I am the eternally free. I've never been born. I'll never die. Right? No, you're a husband. Shut up. Go take the trash out. Right? And so this is the path, and this is the way forward for householders, and it is the right way forward, and it's a good way forward, and it's not a secondary way forward. I say that again and again because I know in Vedanta we tend to put the monks very high on beautiful pedestals, and everybody else is just mumbling and trying their best. That's not the situation at all. That's a deep delusion on our parts. We're seekers, and we're walking together, right? And we're inspirations to each other. You guys feed me. You give me clothes. All of them orange, it's true, but you give me clothes nonetheless. So, right? And so we go hand in hand and we go forward with a deep and loving respect that the God in each of us demands and what's the word I'm trying to think of? Uh, deserves, not just deserves, deserves fundamental respect as an image of God. We love each other point blank for that. And we try our best never to lose sight of that in each other. Chaitanya Deva said that the duties of householders were kindness to living beings, right? If you're making the you as a householder, all of society is built on you, right? And so you develop this kindness toward living beings, just a gentle heart. You take care of your first responsibility is feeding yourself, of course. Your next responsibility is feeding yourself and your family, right? Keeping everybody alive and healthy. And then beyond your family, the extended family. And then beyond the extended family, your spiritual community. And beyond your spiritual community, the society at large depends on you. And all of that is worship on your part. And you're welcome to make as much money as you want to make. Making money is the duty of a householder. It's not wrong to want to make more money. What makes it wrong is if you want to make more money to buy another Ferrari. Right? If you've already got a car, you've already got a car, move on and make sure your wife has her car. Oh, she's got one too, and the kids have one too. Oh, and you got the neighbor one also? Well, okay. Now you can go out and start giving away free cars. Right? The duty is for you. So you do this by developing kindness to living beings, service to the Vaishnavas, and chanting of God's holy name. So service to your spiritual community, right? You do that. It's the best way to do something you'll get nothing in return for. So serve your community and then chant the names of God. Sit there and be in the presence of your beloved always. Keshab Sen once said about me, now he asks us to hold to both God and the world, but one day he will sting us. No, that is not true. Why should I sting, right? So the Brahmo Samaj didn't really believe in monasticism, right? That was a householder's path. And so he's saying, well, right now Ramakrishna is telling us to hold to the world and God, but later on he's going to come and rip the chair out from under us and tell us only to rely on, to only think of God. And Ramakrishna says very clearly, no, that's not true. The world exists for you, and it is your ladder to the divine. Use it as such, and you'll be fine. Get lost in me and mine, and the guarantees are off, and the suffering is on, right? So why should I sting? And Mani Malik says, but sir, you do. And the master is smiling. How so? You're a householder. Why should you renounce? Right? So he smiles because yes, renunciation is necessary for everybody. It just takes a different form, right? The renunciation for a householder is this renunciation of selfishness, right? But he can still buy a car for the welfare of his family and children and whatnot. He can still buy a car. He can have that ranch, That's not the problem. The problem is selfishness. But for the sannyasin, a very different path. You know, you're not going to take a wife. You're not going to serve society in that way. You're going to accept alms. So you're not going to go out there and get your job and fall into that. Your discipline is different. You live without a house. You live without being actuated. You live according to the dictates of the monastery and the rules and go forward, right, in that way. Serve the devotees, love the devotees. All right, we're going to stop there today.